Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Anne and today I'm giving you my Edinburgh book haul. Last week I went on a trip to Edinburgh with my boyfriend. We were there for 4 days and it was really wonderful. I had never been there before, but Edinburgh has been a city that I've been wanting to visit for quite some time. I've watched a lot of booktubers who live there, like Ashley from Frolic Through Fiction and Jean from Jean's Thoughts. And whenever they made a vlog that showed off the city, I really wanted to go there. It seemed like a city I would really enjoy. So I was really happy that we finally got to go there and it was amazing. We did a lot of walking. We walked through town, we visited some museums, we visited the castle, and of course we went to a lot of bookshops. We visited 8 bookshops in total, 2 per day that we were there. There were even more bookshops that I would have liked to visit, so that tells you quite a bit about how many great bookshops Edinburgh has. But in this video I want to show you the books that I bought, and I'll also put up a picture of the bookstore, because of course I took a lot of pictures in the bookstores as well. I'm a bookseller myself, so it was fun to look at the bookshops from a professional point of view, to see things that we might be able to do in the bookshop I work at. So yeah, I had a really good time and I really wanted to share that with you. So without further ado, let's go. On our first day in Edinburgh, the first bookshop we visited was Armchair Books, which is a really pretty, really wonderful second-hand bookshop that has a lot of books. There was quite a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, but mostly there were a lot of classics and modern classics. There weren't that many newer books, but they did have a really wide selection. So if I were living in Edinburgh and there was a classic that I wanted to read or an older book that was very popular, Armchair Books would definitely be the first place I would go to. And the first book I picked up at Armchair Books was this one, which is a bit of a modern classic. It's A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. This is a book that has been on my radar for quite some time. I have read a different book by Bill Bryson called Notes from a Small Island, which I got as a birthday gift years ago. I really enjoyed that one. I really liked his writing style and his humor. And this seems like a really good way to just learn about a lot of different things, because A Short History to Nearly Everything is Bill Bryson's quest to understand everything that has happened from the Big Bang to the rise of civilization. How we got from there, being nothing at all, to here, being us. The ultimate eye-opening journey through time and space, revealing the world in a way most of us have never seen it before. That sounds like a fun read, especially knowing I enjoy his writing style. And if it's anything like Notes from a Small Island, it will be quite funny, it will be light, and it will be very interesting. No idea when I'll get around to it. This is probably one of those books that's going to end up on my list of 10 books I have to read next year or the year after that. But I'm glad to have it now and I'm excited to read it, of course. And then I picked up a second book at Armchair Books, and that's Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I read 100 Years of Solitude, which is this other very famous book, a couple of years ago and really enjoyed it. I was surprised by how much I loved that one. So when I came across this one in multiple different editions, this version alone was there 3 times, but I chose the least bettered one. When I came across this one, I really wanted to pick it up because I do want to read more by Marquez. I don't really know what this book is about, to be honest, which is something I'm just now realizing. And it doesn't say anywhere because these are all blurbs. I do know that I enjoyed his writing style. I know that he writes magical realism, so I'm excited to read this one as well. I'm going to say that with every book, as I always do in book hauls. And then I figured it'd be fun to show you the books my boyfriend got on this trip as well, because there are quite a few that I would like to read myself too. This first one isn't one of them, but I figured I'd show it to you anyway. It's The 199 Steps by Michelle Faber. I don't know anything about this book, but I know that my boyfriend really enjoys this author's writing, so he was very excited to find it. The next bookstore we visited was Transreal Fiction, which is a bookstore that focuses entirely on fantasy, sci-fi and horror. So there is no contemporary fiction there, there's no literary fiction, just those genres, as well as graphic novels in those genres. They also had a large bookcase with mass market paperbacks that were all £1, I think. I didn't manage to find anything in there, but I did pick up something else that I am really excited about, and that is How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. I didn't know about this book, about the existence of this book, but I came across it in this bookstore, and if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll probably know that I really enjoyed the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, which I finished reading last year. This is a collection of short stories by N.K. Jemisin, and that sounds really good. N.K. Jemisin's writing is beyond anything I've ever read. Her Broken Earth trilogy was, like I said, I really enjoyed it. It was amazing. I think it's genuinely a masterpiece in sci-fi and fantasy. So I have very high expectations for this collection of short stories. At this bookstore, my boyfriend also picked up this one, Scottish Ghost Stories. This is also a short story collection that features ghost stories from a lot of different authors. Robert Louis Stevenson and Sir Walter Scott are in here as well. And I'm probably someday going to read this one as well. This is one we kind of picked out together, but he decided to pick it up. He's also already started it. He started reading it while we were there, and I think he's enjoying it. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. So then we move on to day 2, and I think this is going to be a long video, but we'll see. On day 2 we went to Stockbridge, and the first bookstore we visited there was Golden Hair, which is a very pretty bookstore that I really enjoyed. I really liked the look of the place. They had a lot of great staff recommendations hanging on the bookshelves as well. I always really enjoyed when the bookstore does that, and it was very inspiring to see as well. The book that I picked up there was also a staff recommendation, because on the second day of this trip I realized that I didn't just want to buy books that had no real significance to the trip to Edinburgh and that I maybe one day might want to read. I really wanted to pick books that I was excited about finding there, and books that maybe had a staff recommendation going along with it, or books that were set in Scotland. And this one is both of those. It's Pine by Francine Toon. I've seen this around quite a few times, I think. I really like the cover with the deer and the forest. And I think this book is set in the Highlands in Scotland. It's about Lauren and her father Niall. They live alone in the Highlands in a small village surrounded by forest. When a woman stumbles on the road one Halloween night, Niall drives her back to their house. In the morning, she's gone. So this involves kind of a mystery of Lauren trying to figure out what happened to this woman. And I think it's also about her not being sure if she can trust her father. I think there might be even more mystery going on here. I don't know that much about it. I know the staff recommendation really made me interested. I know I really like the fact that it's set in the Highlands, so I think this was a great pick. That was the only book I picked up in Golden Hair, even though it was a really pretty bookstore. But the bookstore that I was probably most excited to visit during this trip was Rare Birds, which is a bookstore that features and celebrates women and female writers, and it was such a welcoming place. I had a really nice chat with one of the people working there. She recommended another place for us to visit, which was really nice. And the setup of the store, just the layout and the look, really appealed to me. It was a very pretty, bright, warm store, and I love the fact that they celebrate female writers. So that was a reason that I really wanted to go, and it really didn't disappoint. And I bought 2 books here. The first one is a poetry collection that I've been really curious about for a long time. I think I saw it on the internet sometime, somewhere, and it really caught my eye. And it's The World's Wife by Carol Ann Duffy. I was really excited to find this there. I'd already been looking for this at Armchair Books because I figured that might really be a place I would be able to find it, but I had no luck there. But they luckily did have it at Rare Birds. And it kind of fits because this is a poetry collection that really focuses on the idea of behind every famous man is a great woman. So these are poems that are told through the eyes of wives to famous men. So for example, Mrs. Darwin, or the wife of Freud, and also the long-suffering wife of the devil himself. So there are a lot of different points of view in this poetry collection, and I really like the idea of that. I haven't started reading this yet, so maybe I won't even like the poetry, but it's one I've been interested in for a long time, so I was very excited to find it there at Rare Birds. And then the other book I picked up is a book that I've seen around quite a few times. I was interested in it and I was curious about it, but I hadn't really considered picking it up. But I did at Rare Birds because it's a special edition specifically of Rare Birds bookstore, and it's The Christie Affair by Nina de Gramont. And this is a book that tells the story of Agatha Christie through the eyes of her husband's mistress. Agatha Christie famously went missing for a couple of days, and nobody really knows what happened to her during those days. I think she took off because she found out that her husband was having an affair, something like that. And she was found a couple of days later somewhere, just I think in a bar or an inn. I'm not entirely sure about the details, but whatever happened to her in those days has remained a mystery, and I think this book kind of goes into that, but through the eyes of the mistress. So what happened during that time. And like I said, this is a special edition specifically to Rare Birds, because they have I think they have a book subscription and a book club with special editions, and I thought this was a really nice memento to visiting that shop. And it is a book that I am really curious about, because I love Agatha Christie, and I just love the idea that she just disappeared for a while doing her own thing and nobody knows what happened then. So that was day 2, and on day 3 we visited 2 bookstores again. And the first bookstore we went to was Topping, which I think is a very well-known bookstore in Edinburgh and Scotland in general. And it was really pretty. I really loved this bookstore. It was definitely a big bookstore as well. It had 2 floors jam-packed full of books, and they had so many signed books there, and signed first editions as well. It was kind of ridiculous. My boyfriend bought a signed book there as well. The book is called Old Goat's Time, and it's by Sebastian Barry, which is an author he really enjoys, and it's a signed first edition. There is the autograph. It's still covered in plastic as a safety measure. I think there were a lot of books there that were covered in plastic, but yeah, all of the books there had this kind of banner around it to tell you it was a signed edition. I also got a signed edition there, but the first book I picked up at the store was not a signed edition. It was Hex by Jenny Fagan. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I'm not entirely sure. My boyfriend has already read this one when we were waiting at the airport, but it's a very short, I think it's a novella. It's only 100 pages long, and it is set in Edinburgh. And it's about a woman who is convicted to death, I think, because she's suspected to be a witch. I think she might be visited by someone from the future. I'm not entirely sure, but it sounded really good. And again, because it was set in Edinburgh, I really liked the idea of buying this book in Edinburgh. And then the other book I picked up there was quite a big book. Like I said, it was signed by the author, and it is The Dark Vault by V.E. Schwab. I'm going to take off the signed by the author thing now. V.E. Schwab is one of my favorite authors. She lives in Edinburgh, so I can definitely see her going into Topping and signing her books there, which I thought was really exciting. This is a collection of 2 books, The Archived and The Unbound. I think these were one of the first books she wrote, and they were supposed to be a trilogy, but they were cancelled. I'm not sure how satisfying it will be to read both of these books without a third one being around and available to read, but I really like the idea of buying a V. Schwab book in Edinburgh, and definitely because it was signed. And I also want to make my collection of all of her books complete. So I was really excited to come across this one. And then the second bookstore we visited on day 3 was a really exciting one, because we weren't looking for this one. This wasn't on my list, even though I had heard about it, but I'd kind of forgotten about it. We came across this bookstore kind of by accident, because we were looking for a bus stop and we'd taken a wrong turn. And we were about to turn back when I noticed this bookstore at like a basement level in the street. And it was Type Wronger, and this was such a fun bookstore. It might have been my favorite one we visited. I'm not sure if that's true, but it was a really fun experience, partly because we just came across it by accident, and it was a really pretty bookstore with a great sci-fi section. They had a lot of zines there, some poetry. It was a really fun collection of books. And we also got to talking to a person working there in Dutch, because she asked us if we were from the Netherlands, and then she told us that her mother is American and she's American, but her father is from the Netherlands, and she kind of spoke Dutch really well. So that was a fun conversation. She told us about some other bookstores, about what it was like working there, and it was just really nice to have that kind of conversation. And also, when I was paying for the book I bought there, she asked me randomly something like frog, cat or elephant. There was no cat, because I probably would have said cat, but I said elephant. And then she went and origamied me a little elephant to take home with me. So I took special care to make sure that I got it home safely. It's made from like an old page of a book. And that's such a fun little gift to give to people when they leave your bookstore. I really enjoyed that. So it's sitting in my bookshelf over here on my Heartstopper candle. And then the book that I bought there was a Lucky Dip. And I don't know yet what's in this, because I figured it'd be fun to open it up in this video. It's a mystery book. I've never bought a mystery book before, but I really wanted to buy a book in this bookstore because I enjoyed it so much, and also I felt I would really regret it if I didn't buy a book there as a memento to that bookstore, and also I felt it would be kind of rude, which I know isn't the case, but I wanted to buy a book in every bookstore we visited basically. So then I came across this lucky dip, and all it says is that it's fiction, and a singer rising to fame flees her past to find a future in Nashville, but the darkness may just catch her up. So that sounds exciting. I love books about music. Nashville is a fun setting, so I decided to pick this one. And now I'm gonna open it because it's been a couple of days and I'm really curious to find what's in here. I don't have any ideas, by the way. I don't have any suspicions about what this book is. Maybe you do after hearing that little summary. So if you do, please let me know in the comments if you were right. I don't know. I don't think I know any book that would fit this premise. Okay, maybe I should have known this. It's Run, Rose, Run by Dolly Parton and James Patterson. I've seen this book around a lot. We also stocked it in the bookstore I worked at. I've been kind of curious about this one. I've never read a book by James Patterson, but I love Dolly Parton. I think she's great. So we'll see what I think about this. I kind of like it that it's a book that I had heard of, but had no intention on reading. I now definitely want to read this, although it also would have been fun if it was a book I'd just never heard of before. The back says, every song tells a story. She's a star on the rise, singing about the hard life behind her. She's also on the run. Find a future, lose the past. Nashville is where she's come to claim her destiny. It's also where the darkness she's fled might find her and destroy her. Run, Rose, Run, a novel glittering with danger and desire. So that sounds exciting, and this was really fun. And now we're moving on to the final day of our trip, and we were again planning on visiting 2 bookstores, but we also came across a Forbidden Planet when we got out of the bus. And I didn't buy anything there, but my boyfriend bought this graphic novel called Mercy, the Fair Lady, the Frost and the Fiend. This is a standalone graphic novel comic kind of thing. I don't know anything about it, but I think I want to read it as well because it looks really good. Washington State, late 19th century. During the frenzied historical era commonly known as the Klondike Gold Rush, a mysterious woman named Lady Helen arrives in Woodsboro, a small mining town close to the Canadian border. Meanwhile, the streets and surrounding of Woodsburg are flooded in blood. A heinous creature is killing incautious citizens. What's the connection, if any, between this disturbing presence and the ivory-skinned stranger? So that sounds exciting. I'm glad he picked this up because I'm excited to read it. So let's just move on to the final 2 bookstores. The first one we visited was Blackwell's, and this is a very big bookstore that also had a lot of games. I don't really know much about this bookstore. I know it's one of the oldest in Edinburgh, and I know that I didn't really like the vibe of it. It felt more like a chain bookstore. It wasn't really very pretty, which isn't necessary because they had a lot of great books there. But we didn't even visit the first floor. We just stayed on the ground floor and then went into the basement where there were the board games and the graphic novels and sci-fi and fantasy and young adult. It was a really big bookstore, but I was okay with leaving quite quickly, which was very different with like Topping, which was also a very big bookstore, but really had that cozy feel, kind of like a living room setting, and Blackwell's felt more like a department store basically. But I did pick up something there because I wanted to buy a book in every bookstore, and it was kind of a special edition. I don't know if it really is a special edition, but it is a pretty edition of The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This one features a lot of illustrations, and I've never read this book, but I do want to read more by Neil Gaiman. I don't really know much of what it's about. I think it's about a man who has lost a lot of his memories, the recollections of a man who thought he was lost but is now perhaps remembering a time when he was saved. And I like Neil Gaiman's writing style. I have no idea when I'm going to get around to this, but it's really pretty, so I'm glad I bought it. And then the final bookstore was Lighthouse Books, which is a self-proclaimed radical bookstore, and I really enjoyed this bookstore as well. It was quite small, it was quite cramped because after we went in, quite a few other people came in as well, but I really enjoyed their selection of books. I really enjoyed their little note card attached to the young adult bookshelves, which I'll leave a picture of here. Really enjoyed that message because I completely agree about what it says about young adult fiction. So that was great, and I came across 2 books that I really wanted to buy. Maybe you've noticed this or maybe not, but on every day we visited 2 bookstores and I bought 3 books. And on day 4, I kind of wanted to continue that pattern. So luckily I did find books I really wanted to buy. The first one is Cake Craft by Hannah Freya Blake. I hadn't heard of this book, but it is published by Nyx Publishing, which is a publishing house that is set up by someone I know from the blogging sphere years ago. I haven't spoken to her in a long time. She's called Celine, and she started her own publishing house. And when I saw one of the books she published in this bookstore, I got really excited and I wanted to buy it. Also, this sounds like a fun fantasy that includes cakes and baking, so what's not to like? And then I bought another poetry collection, which is quite special for me because I don't read a lot of poetry, let alone buy a lot of poetry. But I've been wanting to read this, and I kind of forgot about it until we were there at Lighthouse Books. And I remembered at the last moment and checked for it. And they had this one, which I was very excited about. It's called Bargain Bin Romcom by Lena Norms. For those of you who don't know, Lena is also a booktuber. She makes such great videos, not just about books, about a lot of different things, about culture, about society. She's very opinionated and I really enjoy that. She makes very intellectually stimulating videos. I really enjoy those. And she's written a poetry collection which came out last year, I think. And I've been curious about it, but I didn't order it yet or buy it yet. So I was excited to find it here at Lighthouse. So that's the last book I bought myself, but then my boyfriend also bought 3 books at Lighthouse Books. And the first one is the new Max Porter, Shy. This is also a signed edition, which is why he picked it up. And he really enjoys Max Porter's books. He also read Lenny and Grief is the Thing with Feathers. Yes, Grief is the Thing with Feathers, which I also read and enjoyed. So he picked up this one, not sure what it's about. He also picked up a poetry collection that seems really cool. It is called Too Hot to Sleep by Elspeth Wilson, and he showed me a few of the poems. They all seem to mention pop culture. There's one that mentions The Sims, there's one that mentions Taylor Swift, so he was excited about that, and I'll probably read this one as well. And then he bought a book that I also want to read, which is The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. I really enjoyed A Visit from the Goon Squad, and he has read a couple of books by Jennifer Egan that he really enjoyed, including A Visit from the Goon Squad. And I think this one includes characters from A Visit to the Goon Squad, but I'm not sure. It's a bit of a sci-fi novel. It's set in 2010. It's about someone who has an idea for externalizing memory, and I think it might be a bit dystopian as well. Now, I've been talking for a long time now, almost 40 minutes, so I hope I'll be able to edit that down a lot. But I really enjoyed making this video and sharing my experience in these bookstores with you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what was the last book that you bought. What is the prettiest bookstore you ever visited? Please like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me in the future, and have a wonderful day. Bye!